Welcome to another edition of the Business Brains and the Bottom Line podcast. My name is Paul Delegre, your host, and my guest today is Stephanie Dalfonzo. Nice Italian name. I like that, Stephanie. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Paul. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, this is great. So, Stephanie, you're an anxiety expert and an integrative hypnotist. You're also an author. You just came out with a new book that's called Goodbye Anxiety, Hello Freedom. So, a lot going on in your life.
Yes, and it's all good. It's all good because I choose it to be good. So let me just kick us off with this little fun fact.
Okay.
Do you have any idea how many thoughts we have a day, Paul?
Oh, God. Well, me, probably not many, but the normal person, probably millions.
60 to 80,000 thoughts a day.
Wow.
And 95% of them are the same ones, day after day after day. So when we program in, it's not a very nice day. Oh my gosh. That's the kind of day we're going to have. I program in, it's a great day. So it's always a great day.
You know, you got me thinking. So that can be both good and bad, right? If you program negative thoughts in your head, that's what you're going to think of. If you program positive thoughts in your head, that's what you'll think of, correct?
Yes, exactly. And I can't go too deep into this because it hurts my head, but the Nobel Prize for Physics, back in the fall, went to three scientists who are proving exactly what we just said. That and they've been, back into the 1930s with Albert Einstein. They've been trying to prove this, and these three scientists for years were trying to get the Nobel Prize, and they could not come up with any hole in what they were saying. That what we see is because of what we think, right? That we think it into reality. So that's how powerful our brains are.
Yeah, I think, and we could go in a million different directions today, but I'm making a prediction that I think in 100 years, 50 years, the way we heal ourselves is going to be completely different than just popping pills. I think the brain is going to play a big role in the way we heal ourselves. Now, yes, I have no empirical data for this. It's just my opinion.
Well, and there is room for both sides. I totally take an integrative approach, whether it's my physical health, my emotional health. It's an integrative approach because my husband is an absolute perfect example for why I believe in an integrative approach. We are coming up on his 20th rebirth day. So 20 years ago, he received a life-saving liver transplant.
Oh, wow.
And so Western medicine saved his life.
Sure.
Right. Then fast forward to a couple of years ago, he got a fatal cancer diagnosis. Like with treatment, he had a 25% chance at 1 year, 0% at 2. And he's always been very supportive of me, but he's not really been into what I do because, okay, wait, what?
Yeah.
But when you get a fatal cancer diagnosis, what you got? And so we took natural approaches and he had a cancer miracle and he is alive and healthy today. So, I think that they work in concert, that it's the power of the mind. They've shown over and over again, the placebo effect. They did sham surgeries on people's knees where they did the surgery, like they opened it up.
Sure.
But then they did nothing. And the people who had the sham surgery had the same results as the people who had the actual surgery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That proves a point. So, wow, interesting stuff. So, well, let's back up a little bit, Steph. How did you get into this? Like, what was the genesis of you becoming a hypnotist or an anxiety expert?
Okay, so I am an anxiety expert because I contracted anxiety in the womb, and I didn't know it. I spent the first half of my life beyond anxious, but I thought it was normal. And, anybody who's listening or watching, if you walk around and you think that you're supposed to be wearing your shoulders like earrings, you might want to take a look at your stress and anxiety levels. Yeah. So I didn't realize it though, because this is what I thought was normal. So my first career, I was a celebrity radio DJ. I was Stevie Knox. And my last job was doing the morning show. So I was getting up at like 3 a.m. I had 2 small kids and I developed insomnia. And We all have a breaking point. Mine literally was a bag of Cheetos when something set me off and I was smashing my kid's bag of Cheetos because I couldn't function. So all right, I have to go to the doctor. Gave me medication. It worked. And then it didn't.
Yeah, I was going to say, and then.
Oh, that was the worst. That was absolutely the worst because then I was really spinning out. So I was like, all right, how do I get a handle on this? And I started researching and think about this, where we are technology wise now. This was back in the 1990s. So I'm going to the library and there's not a lot of research and I'm checking out cassette tapes to try and figure out how I can calm myself. So I found emotional freedom techniques. Many people may know it as tapping. It's like acupuncture without needles. And I learned to calm and I was able to start sleeping again. So then I was done with my radio career. My husband got this life-threatening, diagnosis that if he didn't have a liver transplant, he was going to die. I was like, oh no, what do I do? So I went to school to be a life coach and kept hearing this hint of hypnosis. And the first day that I sat in that class, I was like, oh my gosh, like the world opened up to me because I really understood for the very first time that we have this powerful, even with all this chat GPT and AI, our minds are still more powerful than any computer we have so far. So when we can start harnessing and programming our minds, anything is possible.
The question is, how do you do that though? Right.
It's so much easier than we think. And you don't think it's easy, do you, Paul?
I mean, I don't know anything about it. So my knee-jerk reaction would be, it's difficult, right?
Okay.
I think most people would be that way.
All right. So let me ask you, do you brush your teeth every morning?
I do.
Okay. Was that a difficult habit to get into?
It was not.
Right. So, okay, if that's not hard to get into, why would something else be more difficult? It all comes down to, I'm just going to touch on this briefly, but when we experience something for the first time, regardless of what it is, there's neurons in our brain that fire off. Well, the next time we experience the same thing or something similar, the same group of neurons clumps together and fires off again. And these neural pathways get deeper and deeper and deeper. So, it is just second nature to you. You don't even think about brushing your teeth, right? So when we realize, my stress and anxiety is out of control, what do I do? It can feel like this big, overwhelming thing. But when you chunk it down into short moments of calm throughout the day, then you can start those neural pathways into being calmer. And, my son called me the woo-woo crackpot all through high school. Fortunately, I didn't know it at the time. And then he came home from college one time and he was like, did you start smoking weed? Because he could see the difference in me, that I was no longer this, that it was like, all right, just taking things a little bit more chill. And they're simple. Like the techniques in my book is so thin, and it's thin for a reason, because if you're anxious and I hand you a 400-page book, you're going to go into overwhelm.
Good point.
But when I can say, oh, okay, here, I'm going to show you a little technique, Paul. Probably you don't have a tennis ball with you. So, we could do that. If you have a water bottle, you could do this. Or I know you've got your hands, put your hands in front of your heart and then swing one out to the side and back, the other one out and back, and then keep doing this. And you're going to start noticing how it feels. You're going to start noticing a little sense of calm coming over you. And like, how simple is this, right?
Do we have to do this the whole show, by the way?
No. But the reason this works is, and you can keep doing it or stop, the reason it works is it's called crossing the midline, because we're crossing the midline of the body. More importantly, we're crossing the midline of the brain. So we're activating the left and the right sides of the brain and bringing balance. And so it's a really simple way to just take things down a notch. Like, how simple is that?
Yeah, I think you said in your book you have like 35 techniques. So that seems like a reasonable number to me, right? And versus
so the 35, you don't even have to learn all 35.
Right, I was going to say, you pick a few that work for you, right?
Yeah. And that's why literally all the techniques are in alphabetical order, because I don't want you to feel it's only like 101 pages. I don't want you to feel you even have to read the whole thing. Read the first 2 short chapters, which sets you up, and then peruse and say, oh, strike a pose. What's that about? It's about literally go ahead and strike a pose. You can do it like this, or you could do it like this. There's scientific research behind it. Amy Cuddy, who is a social psychologist, I think, out of Harvard, did this TED talk on striking a pose. And she had people come in and she was testing their saliva. And she's testing for cortisone, which is the stress hormone, and testosterone, which ladies, we have it too. We just don't have as much as the guys do. Right. Yep. So she tests them. Then she has them stand or sit in a power pose for 2 minutes. And it doesn't have to be this big thing. It could just be opening up across your collarbones for 2 minutes. Test the saliva again. The cortisol is way down. The testosterone, our leadership hormone, is way high. Conversely, the other way around, how many of us spend so much time hunched over like this? Do that for 2 minutes, test the saliva. It's the exact opposite. So now the cortisol is really high and the testosterone is really low. So if you're going into an interview or you're going into a client to pitch a big sale and you're nervous, before you go into the restroom and just do a power pose for 2 minutes. It's remarkable.
Makes sense. I know sometimes when I've gone on, early in my career, when I've gone on job interviews, I hated sitting in the lobby, right? Because you're sitting there like this. I used to get up and go to the bathroom and pace, like you say, not knowing what you just told me. I knew it made me feel better.
Right. You intuitively knew, ooh, this feels so much better than sitting there hunched over.
Right. Exactly. So I did something right along the way then. That's good to know.
I think you might have done a few things right along the way, Paul.
Yeah. So this is fascinating stuff. So I will say this. I don't care who you are, we've all had anxiety in our lives.
Yeah.
Right. We try to be tough and not show it, but all the way from as you're a kid getting report cards and sports and as you get older, having children. I mean, I think the most stressful years of my life was when my kids were young, like me and a million other people, right? Yeah. Geez, I got 3 kids. How am I going to raise them right? How am I going to send, where are they going to go to school? Can I afford it? And now that I'm past all that, I look at it and go, why did I worry so much? I wish, I wish I met you 20, 30 years ago, because that's the advice I give young people today. Is I said, look, just keep putting one foot in front of the other. It'll all work out. You're worrying about what's going to happen in 20 years isn't helping today. I can tell you that.
But you know what? I didn't listen when I was younger, and people would tell me that. I didn't listen. I remember when my kids were little and thinking there were days when it felt like it was a month in 24 hours, right? Like I couldn't wait for the time to pass. And I'd hear experienced moms saying, oh, don't wish it away. It goes by too fast. I was like, yeah. And now I'm on the other side of it going, wow, that was fast. Right. Yeah. So I'm on this mission, right? I never planned on writing a book. I'm a DJ, right? Yeah. I'm verbal. I'm not written, but I heard this whisper, write the book. And, I know these techniques like the back of my hand because I've been doing this for 18 years. I've been practicing as a hypnotist for 18 years now. So I was like, oh my gosh. All right. So here's this mission of, let me show you simple ways, because I really believe that traditional approaches to stress and anxiety are not enough anymore. And the research proves it. Almost every week I'm seeing new statistics on just how stressed, anxious, and sleep deprived we are. Yeah. And unfortunately, kids, teens, and young adults, I think, are the ones that fared the worst from the pandemic.
I agree. Completely agree with you on that stuff.
Talking with somebody the other day who has a 14-year-old stepdaughter, and she was in middle school when all of a sudden, first of all, middle school was the best time of my life. Said no one ever, right? So it's already a hard time. Now we're doing the remote learning. We're having to, read IQs because we're wearing the masks and stuff. So because of that, they have shown now that kids' brains aged 3 years in that first year of the pandemic. So it was aging 3 times as fast as it should. Here in my state, I live in Connecticut. if you want mental health services for your child, there's a 6-month wait.
Oh, wow.
A 6-month wait. So because it was long before the pandemic, I have an initiative with my book that you buy a copy of my book and I donate a copy to a school or organization that will help teach kids how to emotionally regulate. Because when we can learn from a young age that, oh my gosh, I have this power that I can control this, that is not my emotions controlling me, it changes everything.
Yeah, that's a great point, Stephanie, by the way. I think a lot of people feel out of control, like they don't have control the way they're feeling. And they think all these outside forces are making them feel this way.
Exactly.
And that
Exactly. Because we feel like, oh, I can't control this because it's outside me. But emotions are a choice. And I say that in all of my presentations. And I can see people saying, what do you mean? And I used to feel that way. I don't have any control over this. Yeah, I do. But it took me repetition and practice.
Yeah.
So, when I work with people, when I share the techniques, it's not like, oh, okay, well, that was nice. Now my anxiety's gone. No, you have to practice them again and again and again. And when you are practicing these on a regular basis, things are a little smoother. And things are going to push your buttons, and there's going to be, just because I wrote the book doesn't mean I don't experience anxiety. I do. However, when it strikes, I know what to do.
So
I know.
I think recognizing and taking action are probably the two biggest things.
Exactly. Exactly. Because again, when it was just normal for me to walk around with my ears up, like, my shoulders up like this and worrying, but not just worrying about anything and everything, Paul, I always worried about the worst case scenario. My husband would be on a business trip and I'd be like, oh my God, what if the plane crashes? Like, why would I go there? But that was my neural pathways to go to the worst case scenario. Now, no, I'm still not smoking weed, but I'm chill enough that my son thinks so.
That's good. Yeah, that's I mean, I think it's great the work you're doing. I'll be honest with you, because I think, I don't care everyone has anxiety, I would think. And I'll tell, like, I remember I said to my daughter was, when she was younger, was stressing out about something. And I think it was sports, a big game coming up. And I tried to explain to her, I said, the way you're feeling is normal for a game. I got nervous for games. And she looked at me like I was a superhero. She goes, no, you never got nervous for games, did you? Like, they look at us like we never have any problems. Like, Meg, we all had problems. We all feel this way. So there's nothing. And so I think it made her feel a little bit better to know that she wasn't alone.
Yeah, definitely. So let me tell you, a couple of years ago, I worked with a 14-year-old girl. She's local. I have a pediatrician who's been sending me kids for over 10 years. So the mom called and she wanted help for her daughter who had this fear of dogs. And there was a big Halloween party coming up where there was going to be a dog there. So she wanted to be able to go and be fine. So you would think if she has a fear of dogs, that it was probably rooted to some bad experience with a dog as a younger child, right? She was a competitive cheerleader. And she was a freshman, at the beginning of the school year. So she's brand new to high school. We worked together. After the first session, she comes back to the next session. She goes, I did a backflip in front of my coach I've never been able to do. Now, I'm not talking to her about her cheerleading, right? Yeah. I'm talking about this fear of dogs. After the second one, she got a spot on the varsity cheerleading team as a freshman, a brand new freshman, right?
Wow.
So the third session, she came to my house. Again, she's local because I had told the mom, when I know she's good with dogs, I want to do the last session at my house because I want her to meet Maggie, my therapy dog. So she comes and the mom comes back and she's got tears streaming down her face because the girl's sitting there petting my dog next to her. Then I find out from the mother that, the mom was home waiting for the girl to text her to come pick her up the whole night of the party. Nothing. Mom shows up at the end of the party and I couldn't believe it. There's not one dog. There's not two dogs. There's 3 dogs walking around this party. And she's just laughing and having a good time. So how incredible is that? So then, by the way, spoiler alert, it had nothing to do with a dog from her early childhood. She was maybe 3 or 4 years old. at her very first dance recital, and she was freaking out. So we did
Yeah.
the healing work around it. Then I find out weeks later, mom sends me an email or a text, and she goes, "Oh, by the way, she stopped throwing up on competition days." Now, nobody had told me any of that was going on, but because we did the healing work and she was using
Sure.
these techniques, she was able to really find her power.
Yeah, it affected all aspects of her life, not just the fear of dogs, quote unquote, right?
Right, right.
Yeah.
But so think about that, Paul. At 14 years old, this girl now knows there's nothing she can't do.
Yeah.
Like
Boy,
that,
I wish I had met you, when I was 14, because like every kid back in those days, you kept your feelings inside. You didn't. Now, I think it's a good thing. People are more open about their feelings, but I kept everything in and didn't let anyone know any stresses and anxiety I had. And it's
yeah.
I think I came through it okay, but
You want something to cry about? I'll give you something to cry about. That's what I heard.
yeah. Yep. My father's famous statement was, "Get off my ear, will you? Leave me alone." Okay, Dad. Shut up and make me a cup of coffee. Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, my dad was a World War II veteran, so he's he was cut from a different cloth, I guess.
Yes. Yes. And we learn lessons
Yep.
from everything, right?
Yep.
The positive and maybe things that were a little challenging.
Yeah. So I'm looking at my notes here, and you mentioned something about fight or flight syndrome that you wanted to talk about. Tell me about that and how that the effects on people in that situation.
So fight or flight is because we are still wired the same way we were when we lived in caves. So, we need to know.
Some people still think I live in a cave, Stephanie, by the way, just so you know. Just
okay,
saying.
well, I don't know. It's a pretty nice looking cave. So, you're doing okay. But so when we were in caves and, we heard something in the bushes, we needed to be able to run to get
Right.
out of the way, right? Or we would go into this freeze mode of, right? So we needed to be able to move really quickly and to get out of harm's way. But now here we are with our devices and all the notifications. They're dinging us, dinging us, dinging us, dinging us like woodpeckers on our nervous system, activating this fight or flight syndrome, which is flooding our bodies with cortisol. Yeah. So it's like we've got our foot on the gas pedal and it's like all the way down to the floor and we're just nonstop. When we can let up on that, this is when I talk about these short moments of calm, interspersing this, then we can come back into more of a balance. So when the pandemic hit in March of 2020, collectively, the world didn't go into fight or flight mode. We went into freeze. Because if you think about it, it was just such a shock to all of our systems. The entire globe went.
Yeah, it was we'll be talking about this for the rest of our lives. The whole world shut down. I've never seen that in my lifetime. That's for sure.
Yeah. And sadly, I was like, okay, this is what I've been prepping for my entire life. I know how to help people. I know, and I say sadly because, I certainly wish that we hadn't experienced that, but I'm also very grateful that I was able to bring comfort to people and some hope and possibilities that, this is what's going on. This is why I talk so much now about, I want to teach you how to say goodbye, anxiety, hello, freedom, regardless of what's going on around you.
Yeah.
So it's about learning to respond instead of react.
Yeah. So one of the things we talked about, earlier in the show, and I don't think we're clearly not going to have enough time to, go over all your techniques, but you talk about, kind of reprogramming your brain, garbage in, garbage out, controlling your thoughts. Can you share some techniques in that area? Like how do you reprogram your brain?
All right. So again, simple ways. I already taught you the crossing the midline, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I'm not tired and I'm not bored. That's the technique. I want you to yawn with me. Like really just big old yawns. Right.
Okay.
So what is so absolutely fascinating about this is, first of all, a third of Americans are not getting even 6 hours of sleep a night. So everybody's yawning these days. Our brains don't know the difference between real and imagined. So when we yawn, whether it's an involuntary yawn or Yeah, a fake yawn. The same thing happens. We're triggering the vagus nerve, which is the longest nerve in the body. It goes from our brain down into our belly, encircling on, wrapping, little gentle hugs on all of our internal organs. It stimulates the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the rest, digest, and relax nervous system. So the
Okay.
more that we can just do that, we're taking our foot off the gas for that
Okay.
fight or flight, right? The sympathetic nervous system.
Sure.
So yawning, how simple is that?
Yeah, I think we can
Another
all do
one
that.
is, another one is, Paul, I'm going to ask you, what's right now?
What's right?
Yeah, I'll tell you what's right now for me is I'm having a great conversation with you.
Oh, okay.
Hopefully we're helping some other people.
Yeah.
My husband and I are healthy. We have plenty of food in the pantry. So Paul, what's right now?
Yeah, that's a great question. Like I said, ditto, having a great conversation with you. This has been fun. But I'm in a good spot in my life. I've got a lovely wife, 3 great kids. They're all doing well. I mean, I've got a lot to be thankful for, no
And
question about it.
and how does that feel when you start focusing on what's right? How does that feel?
Yeah, it makes me feel good. A very proud feeling when you look at the accomplishments of your family and how they're doing in life professionally and personally.
Yeah.
It could, because I know a lot of parents that are frustrated with their kids. I'm not. I think all my kids are doing great, and they're great people too. So yeah, no, it definitely gives me a
Nice.
good feeling when I talk about them like that.
All right. So when you go to the feeling place, not the thinking place of gratitude, first of all, back up. The act of looking for gratitude drops our cortisol levels by 23%.
Wow.
Wow. Just looking
Wow.
for something to be grateful for. Then we go to the feeling place, because that's why I was like, ooh, how does that make you feel, Paul, when you say that, right? When you go to the feeling place, then it gets our bodies to produce dopamine and serotonin, which are the happy hormones that we can find in certain pills,
Sure.
right? So, just looking for something to be grateful for, 23% drop in cortisol, then I'm upping my dopamine and serotonin. It really can be this simple. So
Yeah.
I know your kids are grown, and my kids are grown and flown. But anybody who's listening, if you have young kids still at home, this is a great thing to start introducing. When the witching hour is going on, and you just feel like you're going to snap. Like, all right, everybody, stop. What's right now? It's a pattern interrupt, and it's
Yeah.
so simple.
Yeah. I know it sounds. I'm not going to lie. I have not read your book yet, but I plan to. That's for sure. And I'm going to share this with my family because I think we could all use a little bit of help, right? No
Yeah,
one
and
is
I'm
immune
sure,
to it.
and I'm sure your kids could as well, because
Yeah.
they're still in that cusp of where I was saying kids, teens, and young adults, and how they bore the brunt of the pandemic and then all the social unrest.
Yep.
Um, I'm hearing from a lot of parents of young adults that they're having tough times.
Yeah. So couple things. If someone wanted to buy the book, where would they go to get it? And
Amazon.
if someone wanted to contact you directly, I mean, you do, you're a hypnotist. How would they do that, Stephanie?
So ask people to go to the number 5 easy ways to calm anxiety.com. 5 easy ways to calm anxiety.com. I'll send you 5 of the techniques from my book. And then I'm not spammy with emails. I send occasional emails, and they're always with tips of, okay, here's something you can try to help you. Because again, the 35 techniques, I probably have another 35 that didn't make it
Sure.
into the book, but it's like a smorgasbord. And it's like, ooh, okay, here's this wonderful smorgasbord.
Yeah.
Pick what works for you, and then action it. Because transformation doesn't happen without repetition. You've got to practice these again and again. So that literally, I had a 23-year-old young woman come back to me recently, and she said, I don't know if you remember me. You helped me over my fear of flying 10 years ago when I was 13. And when I got to this one certain exercise, she says, I still have the rock you gave me 10 years ago.
Wow.
So at 13, I give this rock, and it's tied in with a certain little exercise that I do with everybody. And 10 years later, she was still doing it because she
Wow.
realized how much comfort that was for her. So
Yeah.
action.
Yeah, and I think you're making it simple too. I think human nature is if you make something too difficult, we talked about this earlier in the show, you're not going to do it. But if you
Right.
get some really simple techniques that you can do on a daily basis, it has some legs. There's no question about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And, it's not just me, like, oh, because I'm the expert and I've done all this research. It was born out of necessity for me. So I know, from my own personal experience, and then think about it, 18 years, it's been thousands and thousands of clients. I know this stuff works. And now I have enough science to be able to back it up. So I'm not just saying, ooh, airy fairy, I'm pulling this out. Oh, by the way, yawn, here's the science behind it. Oh,
Nice.
Crossing the midline, here's the science behind it.
Oh, that's awesome. So any last comments for the audience out there? Like I said, I think, the name of the book is Goodbye Anxiety, Hello Freedom. You can get that on Amazon. I'm definitely going to get a copy and read it. But any last words of wisdom for the audience out there?
Yeah, I would say, if you're just starting to realize, maybe I've got a little more stress and anxiety than I was aware of, don't beat yourself up. Just, okay, notice where you are and begin. Take one technique and start using it again and again and again throughout the day. If you can, buddy up with somebody, get my free download and share it with a friend, and then buddy up. And for at least the next 7 days after that, commit to checking in each and every day. Hey, how's it working? Which one's working well for you? Because Stephen Covey said, accountability breeds responsibility.
Yeah. Good point.
All right. The difference between reacting and responding. When we can get that responding habit, then we can find much more balance.
Yeah. Well, we'll finish on that note. This is a great show. I think this is so pertinent to life today.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much. Because, it doesn't have to be so hard. And I love being able to shine the light on that and say, okay, here's hope, here's possibilities.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing this with us. I think hopefully you can help a few people, right? And that's the name of the game.
Yes, it is the name of the game. Thanks so much, Paul.
Oh, you're welcome, Stephanie. So that's a wrap for the Business Brains on the Bottom Line. Until next time.